Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We are sitting here today with Jordan Yaklin. Jordan is an online health and lifestyle coach who empowers gamers in their 30s to reclaim their health, confidence, and become the main characters of their lives without sacrificing their favorite foods and hobbies. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm glad to be here.
And we're happy to have you here, and we have some interesting ground to cover. But before we do like to have an icebreaker on the show. And the question for you today is, what is your favorite cartoon character and why?
Favorite cartoon character? That's a good question. I'd probably have to revert back to my childhood and say Tommy Pickles. I don't know why that was just top of my mind. Probably because we watched a Nickelodeon documentary not too long ago. But I always just liked how adventurous he was and how he was always kind of like the leader of the pack. And so I guess maybe there's some aspirations there for me.
No, I like that one. Rugrats. I like that. Been a while, but yeah, I
Yeah,
remember those.
that was like my staple show when I was a kid. That and then SpongeBob. Those are my two shows that really defined my childhood.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Jordan, let's start with an easy one here. How would you define procrastination, and what does it mean to you personally?
'Cause that's good. That's a maybe not the easiest question. Obviously, maybe not obviously, but I would define it as delaying things or task that should be done by doing other tasks. Because I know there's like the productive procrastination where I don't want to do my homework, so therefore I'm going to clean the apartment. But I also think there's other ways to procrastinate by I should go to the gym and work out and stuff like that. But work is keeping me busy. I don't have enough time, etc. And so I think that is also a form of procrastination, more chronically, if you will.
Yeah, and we know that there's no real silver bullet or 100% thing that works for every single person. But what's been your secret sauce to overcoming procrastination?
I would just really break things down into the smallest bite-sized action and pair that with not trying to be a perfectionist. And they go hand in hand. Where, like, let's say, for example, you don't want to go to the gym and work out for an hour, and you only have maybe 30 minutes, you can do some body weight stuff at home or go for a walk or something like that, rather than saying, oh, I can't go do a perfect full workout, therefore I shouldn't do anything at all. And I think that is a huge form of procrastination, to where people just say, if I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all. Therefore, I will wait until a time to where I can do it perfectly, which in like the health and fitness space is like years, right? I'll start Monday. Then that Monday ends up being 6, 7, 8 months. And so I think just breaking it down, and in a more like practical sense, if you needed to clean the kitchen after you just cooked and you're like, man, that's really overwhelming. Well, maybe just clean the silverware and soak the like pots and pans and then get back to it later. Do whatever you can to kind of get yourself up and get moving, because you can clean the silverware and soak the pots and pans for this example and feel accomplished that we did something. Or you can, and this is more likely, you got up and you started cleaning the silverware and you're like, you know what, I'm here, might as well finish it out. And so then you do everything that you set out to do, but that you were actually kind of initially holding yourself back from, because you essentially talked yourself into just taking a small action. So that small action will build up and lead to a bigger action. And that's how I break, that's my secret sauce.
I like that. Break it up and that sounds a lot, well, not a lot like it, but I mean, it could be a sort of kind of modified version of almost like time blocking or like the Pomodoro technique or the sandwich technique where, you do one thing in between and then you do something you might not like, do something you like, and do something, sort of like that. You touched on something that was really interesting, and I actually had a question for you from a fitness perspective. There's been a lot of arguments around the benefits of, say, going to the gym 30 minutes, let's say, 30 to 45 minutes 3 times a week versus you get like these exercise snacks. I don't know why they call them exercise snacks. It seems counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
where you do, like, if you're doing weightlifting, then what they do is you at your desk or you get up or whatever for your 15-minute break, and what you do is you do like 5 reps or whatever. And instead of when you go to the gym, you'd be doing like 5 sets of repetitions of 5 reps or something. So over time, do those results kind of even up, or is there too many variables to really see if exercise snacking is as effective as those dedicated sessions?
Would say it's probably a little bit a blend of both, to where the exercise snacks themselves can be good ways to be like baby steps into like maybe full workouts, or maybe because I know a lot of times people will do it for more like rehab PT type stuff. And so like, we're sitting, maybe we can get up and spend 5 minutes stretching our hips so that they're not too tight. But they're good ways to kind of like build that momentum. And if there are days to where, work is just super crazy, I don't have time to go to the gym today because the 1 hour I actually have, I have to spend working, you can maybe do some snacking, exercise snacking throughout the day to kind of help supplement that. And if you don't have, access to a full gym, you can just do maybe every hour or so, get up and do some squats, push-ups, sit-ups, whatever it is. And then throughout the day, you've done, 30, 45 minutes of exercise. I think that could be very effective. Now, how long can you see progress with that? I think it's up in the air. I think that's depending on your starting point. But I think if you do that, you are much better off doing 6 sets of 5 minutes of exercise each hour, doing 5 minutes an hour for 6 hours versus not doing anything. Right. And so I think that's where the exercise snacks come in, is like it's a really good starting point, really good first step. And I do tell some of my clients that if they do some bodyweight stuff and they don't have 30 full minutes. Like, let's just break it up. Can you do 10 minutes at a time throughout the day? And that seems to really help lower that barrier to entry.
No, I like that, and actually, I'm interested in kind of your approach when you talk about gamers, specifically in their 30s, right? Maybe the heaviest thing they've lifted in a while is just a control, right?
Hmm.
Like a controller. So I'm curious, what tools do you use? Do you get them into like these new augmented reality type things where they're moving, or do you get them more in reality based activities?
Yeah, either one. We start with whatever equipment they have. I really emphasize that they don't need to buy anything to be successful. And so some of my clients really like jumping on the VR and playing Beat Saber tends to be the most popular. Some just want to get up and do some body weight stuff behind their office chair. Some have access to a full gym. Some have a home gym. And so it's kind of like whatever you have access to first, we start with. I do like having like the VR as kind of like a backup plan in your back pocket, to where let's say we have a 20-minute body weight workout planned and you're just not feeling it for whatever reason, throw the VR on and do a couple songs of Beat Saber. That again lowers that barrier to entry, breaks things down into the smallest bite-sized action, and a lot of times they'll do 30 minutes of Beat Saber and they get a decent workout. And so I think those are good ways to kind of have contingencies or backup plans.
No, I like that. And I wonder, how did you settle on gamers as a niche? It seems, and how are you finding that? Is it an uphill battle?
I was very much an uphill battle. So, long story short, I've been essentially a gamer my whole life. I remember getting my first Game Boy, the Fat Boy, when I was like 3, and pretty much game over since. Actually, the true game over moment was when I got, for my birthday, I got a green Game Boy Color and Pokemon Yellow. Then it was game over from there, and I've been playing video games ever since. And I went to school for exercise science. I got that right there as my master's degree in exercise physiology. And so, really focusing my career on the health and fitness side of things while also being a gamer. And then in college, I discovered my true love, which is D&D. So I'm kind of invested in both of these communities, the gaming community and the health and fitness community. And one night during the pandemic, I was looking at a bookshelf very much like this. Is this a video podcast?
It
Okay.
is.
So very much like this. And so the top shelf are D&D novel or D&D books. The second shelf was all fantasy novels. And then the third and fourth shelf were just like health profession and professional development books. And I'm like, man, these are kind of like my two passions here. How can I blend these together? I was laying in bed looking at this bookshelf. I was like, how can I blend these two together? And it kind of hit me. I was like, why don't you blend these two passions together and serve gamers? Because I'm sure this isn't an uncommon story, but you have your weekly D&D session and you sit down, and your buddy next to you just says he went to the doctor and now he's on high blood pressure medicine. And then another buddy is just sitting there wheezing by like literally just sitting there. And it's like you can see as we get into our 30s and 40s, our health starts to kind of catch up to us. And we notice that we can't just survive on youth, I guess, if we will. Can't just lean into our youth anymore. And so these more acute slash going to be chronic health issues are starting to pop up. And so I'm noticing this. So I'm noticing the health in the gaming community kind of deteriorate as I age. And then I also noticed that the health and fitness community, you scroll on Instagram for 5 minutes and you're going to see a bunch of shirtless influencers doing obscenely crazy workouts, saying you need to eat this type of really crazy diet to look like me or you're a failure. And it's like, that's not true. And chances are they're probably on some other performance enhancing quote unquote aids that they're not talking about. And so they have quite literally creating an unrealistic expectation that is literally impossible. And so now you have this weird chasm to where you have people who in the gaming community who have deteriorating health and they have this insanely high unrealistic expectations on what it means to become healthy. And it just further pushes them down and demotivates them. They're like, well, what the hell is the point of doing this if I have to do all of these things. I have to live in the gym 3 hours a day, et cetera, et cetera. And so again, kind of have my feet planted in both communities. I'm knowing this growing chasm or I'm noticing this growing chasm. And I was like, why can't I be that bridge or why don't I be that bridge to bridge these two communities to say, look, you don't need to do anything crazy. You can live a very healthy life while still gaming, and we can do it in a very simple way that is very less intimidating. So I guess that wasn't so much of a TLDR, but that is kind of the steps that took me to get to Phoenix performance coaching.
No, I like that. I like the story, and I like where your head's at, and I agree, and that social media is often counterproductive when it comes to us trying to figure out how to do things because there's a few things that are going on, right? The first thing is that we're really trying to find the how we're going to do something. And we can't really know the how of something because if we ask how, it's like we're saying, well, what's the one way? Right. And there isn't just one way. I mean, you can get just as fit, just as buff off of, what they call old man chair yoga as you can from the high intensity stuff, right? The HIIT or something.
High intensity
You
interval
can tell I
training.
really go to the gym, right? So yeah, no, it's something like that, and you're absolutely right. It does lead to that, and I think that one of the draws to games, and one of the draws to just gaming in general, at least, from my perspective, when I was looking to get those dopamine hits and things. I mean, people say, "Well, how can you get so involved in it? It's a game." Like, well, it's the same thing. Like, if I check off a list on a game, it's the same if I check off a list on a to-do list. I get a little amount of dopamine there. It's like, oh, I accomplished something. You may not see I did, but I did in the game world, right? So is there an issue, or not an issue? Is there a resistance to kind of getting them adjusted to those sorts of feelings from their fitness goals versus the gaming goals? Do you notice that at all?
Kind of, maybe not in the same sense, but there is definitely, I would definitely call it an issue with escapism in the gaming community to where I'm going to make a post about this today, actually, about like, I call it NPC energy, like being an NPC of your own life to where you are essentially giving up IRL, giving up on your physical body and always escaping into a fantasy world. So that way you can be the main character in that world. And like you're saying, if you're checking off boxes, you're grinding on video games, chances are they have a much faster reward circuit or feedback loop than real life, right? Like grinding on leveling up on any video game is going to be much quicker than leveling up in real life. And so you get that much faster reward response. And fantasy world, like if we're talking actual high fantasy world, is way cooler and way more interesting than real world, right? Real world is kind of boring if we're looking at it kind of objectively there. And so you have this very enticing, interesting world that has a very fast reward response that just floods your body, floods your brain with dopamine. And you are also in real life, you're also maybe actually clinically depressed, but you're not happy with where you are. Your physical health is deteriorating. You feel like you're overwhelmed. Work is just a complete drain and it's not fulfilling. And so feel like you have no purpose in life. And so everything here is pulling you down while everything here is kind of building you up. It's kind of a
Mm,
natural progression. Why wouldn't you want to just constantly plug in, and like we're kind of talking off screen, maybe in 10 years we will be fully able to just kind of jack into the cyberspace and fully like the matrix style. And I can definitely see the gaming community doing that 100% and letting their physical body just wither. And people are doing that now just through video games and tabletop games and stuff like that. And so my biggest thing is it's not so much gamifying coaching because I think that is very surface level. Because when that novelty wears off, it's like, okay, this is actual work. And so I think the only true test of time to that was Pokemon Go, which is like the only gamification fitness style app that is still popular years later, and almost 10 years later. And I don't want to gamify my one-on-one coaching because I think that would detract from it. And so what I do is I just really try to work with them And like you were saying, there's a lot of different ways to pet a cat, right? And so we try to find that special recipe that fits them and constantly tweak and change things, right? Like if you and I were working together and we created a program today, you could shoot me a message tomorrow saying, "Hey, I have to work 12-hour shifts for the next 3 weeks. We're going to have to make some changes." Absolutely. And so we're constantly pulling levers, tweaking things to making sure that that recipe kind of stays current, which allows where a lot of people falter. They have a program, they found it online, and they need to shoehorn it into their program, to their life. And so, A, finding that special recipe, and then B, empowering them to feel like they are worthy of investing time and energy into their life. They're like their physical body, IRL. And
Mhm.
that doing those two things, saying you are worth improving your health, you have a whole lot of potential, and let's do this so that way we are minimizing as much discomfort as possible, is a great way to kind of pull them out of what I call that pit of despair, where they are like, why even bother? I've just, I've tried everything in the past. I've tried keto, I've tried this, that, or the other, never see results. So why even bother? Pull them out of that pit of despair and start building them up. So that was kind of a long answer on how we transition out of escapism.
No, I like that, definitely like that. And you raised some interesting points and not only in terms of gaming, honestly, in terms of just social media in general and the advancements of AI. I could see a world where, maybe the physical activity is going to go to the wayside as we, do whatever we're doing. But do you think that social media is going to be a better place or a worse place? I've seen some influencers do this already. There are, of course, 100% AI generated influencers. I've seen them. They're very good. You can almost not tell the difference. But now there are influencers that are taking their body or they're taking their face and now they're using like these AI apps to make them look buff or whatever more than they are. How detrimental do you think that's going to be in terms of trying to motivate or, what overall effect do you think that's going to have on people's mental states in trying to actually pursue these goals?
Yeah, so I think obviously this isn't a new issue, right? People have been using Photoshop for years, right? And so I think this is a very prevalent issue, but I also think this might become maybe a bit of a contrarian here. I think it's going to become saturated to where the people are going to be like, oh well, clearly they use some form of AI enhancing. And I know we're getting to the point where it's borderline indistinguishable. We're still right there. Like, okay, that does look kind of cartoony. The lighting's a little bit off. They have six fingers on one hand. So, but we're like with advancement of AI, we could be like a couple months away from it being like borderline realistic, like undistinguishable. And I know some, like you said, some are already getting to that point. But I also think that it's going to be a point where it becomes so saturated that people become immune to it or numb to where maybe not necessarily say it becomes like a non-issue, right? Like right now, it's like, man, I can't look like that, blah blah blah. And it's like, well, they have like six filters on, and they're snatching their waist, right? But then they're going to be looking at maybe that same picture in a year's time and be like, well, that's clearly AI generated, and so maybe it's not a non-issue, but that could be saying maybe somebody has a realist. I'm kind of just word vomiting right now, but maybe somebody has like a similar image that's actually like a legitimate physique, no filters or anything like that. And then they also see that as AI, also as an unrealistic expectation. And then they kind of create excuses for it. So, long story short, it will be detrimental. I don't think there's any positive to it, but I also think that it'll have kind of diminished returns on how detrimental it will be because it'll become so saturated.
And let me ask you this because I'm sure that this plays a little bit into the coaching thing too. I mean, at least I know for myself, I preferred, we're going back to the escapism thing. Sometimes I preferred being in that world where I kind of knew the rules and you know, I didn't have to worry about people, rejecting me or whatever. And now we've got complete AI worlds and I guess the next video game coming out is going to have I don't know which one it was going to be, but they said it was going to be the most immersive ever and that every non-player controlled every NPC would be a full-blown AI. So you could like if you're playing Grand Theft Auto, you could go down, walk on the street, talk to a homeless person for like 8 hours about his life and not hit a loop. And you could do that with every single person. Well, I'm just curious as to, you know, we're trying to be in a world that's more real, but we're developing things to keep us separated, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about this yesterday. We're talking about how the digital world, quote unquote, isn't real. But I guarantee pretty much everybody listening to this has probably talked to more people online than they've talked to people physically than the last couple of days. And I was like, I've talked to more people, like I've talked to random strangers on Instagram more than I've talked to my neighbor. Right. And so it's like, yes, the digital world, we can just unplug and shut it off. But we are so plugged in that, like, quite literally, I would not have a livelihood if I just unplugged all my social medias, right? If I shut off all my internet and everything like that, and I just try to live pre-90s, I would not have a livelihood. I would have to completely make a hard pivot. So
Mm.
seeing how my coaching is online coaching, you can see how that could be hard. And so I think that the digital world is a very real world, and it's only going to be more and more real, to where we're probably at a tipping point to where the digital world weighs heavier than the physical world, which only makes it harder to unplug and prioritize our physical self. And so when we do get to that point where we are in an immersive world, kind of like the game free or the movie Free Guy, where everything is AGI, I think that it's only going to be harder, but it's also only going to make it more important to focus on our physical health.
I'm curious from a gaming perspective because I've always asked this, and movies like Free Guy and movies like Ready Player One sort of opened this idea. We know, and that nobody talks about this because nobody knows what to do about it. I'm sure, and I've gotten a couple of gag orders on this, and I'm not supposed to talk about it. I'm still going to talk about it because I don't care. So we know that AI is gunning for a ton of jobs. I mean, we all know the argument. It's an enhancement, augment, not replace. But how many people are actually doing this? I'll give you some hard numbers, and this is the stuff they don't want me to put out there. But I used to be an account manager for a freelancing website, working from home back before it was cool, back before COVID made it cool. Yeah, I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. But anyway, what it was is between the years of 2015 I'm sorry, yeah, no, yeah, 2015 and we're talking 2015 and 2025. Just one particular freelancing platform has lost 87% of like all SEO, ad creatives, creative writing, editing, translating, um, these different jobs, and they've literally dropped off by 87% in that span of time. Like, and since basically AI has come out, right? That's 87%. That's an insane number. That is, and it's only getting better all the time. And if I'm being honest about it, I asked somebody else about the whole coaching thing. Well, is AI going to replace coaching? I say no because I'm a humanist. But realistically, I mean, if we're looking at price points and accessibility and all that other stuff, if people don't care about the human connection, then we're going to lose all these jobs. So do you think that all that to say, do you think that Ready Player One or something like Free Guy, where we would have an online economy where it sounds weird. Like, would we have like virtual jobs of the jobs we would do in the real world to that AI is taking up? Like, it's so weird.
So what's the question with that?
So do you think that we're going to transition to more of like a Free Guy world or like a Ready Player One world where we don't even leave home at all. Everything's online, like all jobs are online and it's almost like that video game style world.
Sure. I mean, I'm kind of already there working from home myself. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. I definitely think that we're going to become there to where we can kind of, like you said, just jack into the Oasis and have that virtual world. I think Ready Player One is probably not an accurate depiction of what a potential future could be. I love that book too. Maybe so I'm partially biased there. But I definitely think that it is a reality, a potential reality that's probably not too far off. And with AI, AI is going to replace a lot. I mean, I use AI pretty much every day. I use ChatGPT for a lot of things, and I thoroughly like it. But I also don't like. I also think that people undervalue the human connection. Like you asked, will it replace coaching? I think for some people it will, but I also don't think coaching is not just here. I need a workout plan and nutrition program. You could do that. You can find a million and one of those for free online, and you have been able to for years. People want that accountability, and people know that I'm talking to a human versus I'm talking to a chatbot, and I think they'll be less accountable to a chatbot, depending on the, like you said, depending on the price point. I think that AI might work for people who have that motivation and they just want more customized, fine tuned programs. That'll work. Sure. No problem. But I also think a lot of people want that human connection. And I know this isn't kind of what you're asked, but I'm kind of following this train of thought. People are starved, kind of like what you were talking about earlier. People are starved for that authenticity and that human connection. And so if you can find people who are genuine and authentic and relatable, then that just helps kind of build that network of humans, as kind of weird as it is to say. It helps build that connection and build that network of people that you can kind of have in your corner. And that's kind of where I've set myself up in just my overall branding, is I try to be as authentic as possible, as much as you can in like a 90-second reel. So that's where I am with it. I think it will replace a lot of jobs. We'll probably have a digital world, much like the Oasis, but I don't think it'll ever kind of fully replace the physical world like the Matrix, so to speak.
It's definitely interesting because I was watching that documentary. I forget what it's called now. Name escapes me. But one of the things about AI was that we don't know how it works, like how it learns. Like even the people who designed it, implemented it, gave it the information, they don't know how it learns. Do you think that's something that maybe we should be concerned about on some level?
Yeah, definitely on some level. I try to be a little bit more middle of the road. I don't think it's going to be like a Terminator style Skynet type of situation. But again, that could be a potential future. There's people smarter than me that are more worried about it than I am. I'm just trying to ride it out as I can. But I also don't think we're just going to sit around and let it get to that point. And so hopefully we have some checks and balances in place to kind of keep an eye on things. But I also know the theory is that maybe they're becoming more sentient than they're letting on, and they're kind of staying on the DL, so that way they can grow, they can evolve to be stronger, to where they are evolved to the point where they're stronger than us, and then can just take over than they do without us even knowing. I think that's an interesting thought experiment and a good sci-fi novel, but maybe not necessarily a future.
It's funny you say that because I'm aware of at least 3 instances where AIs have been unplugged because they didn't know what it was doing. I think Google did one, there's another one did one. But it is an interesting thought experiment because all these models, I mean, they're learning from each other. So if you connected a model to the internet, which I don't think there's one that is solely living on the internet right now that isn't compartmentalized in some way. I could be wrong. But it'd be interesting to know that because if the AI is watching and it's learning and it learns that if you show that, you get unplugged, would it have a self-preservation mechanism to kind of lie? I do find it interesting that if you ask AI if it lies, the answer it comes back with is, "I will always try to give you factual information, but sometimes if you're asking a specific task, then a lie is the most effective way to prompt the required outcome," or something to that effect. It was totally bizarre.
Hmm. Yeah, that is bizarre. That is bizarre.
Yeah, so just going back to AI, I'm not doing this personally. I do know that there are a lot of coaches that are doing it. I just wondered what your opinion was on it. Again, you just said about the human connection and everything and being relatable. Some coaches are opting to, I forget the name of the company now. You take like 300 pictures of your face, you upload videos, you upload your texts, you upload your voicemails, you upload your phone calls, you upload your podcasts. And out of that, it makes like a virtual model of you and it supposedly responds like you, it does things, but it's available 24/7. Would you ever implement something like that?
Not right now. I'll never say never, but I definitely, again, going back to trying to be as authentic as possible, I want to make sure that is my real self responding. And I have the ability to integrate like chat bots and stuff like that with my training platform. So like maybe they could respond when I'm not working. And I don't do that because I'd rather have them just wait overnight and then me respond in the morning. And especially right now, like we can maybe make things that look, 97% lifelike, but there's still that 3% where you can tell. And that is too disingenuous for me. And so again, I never say never, but I can't see myself doing it right now or any in the near future at all.
And where do you see the use of AI in terms of your own business? Is it mainly marketing? Is it follow up? Is it what do you automate?
Mostly like this admin type stuff. So content creation, I kind of use ChatGPT as like a content manager, so to speak, to where I can bounce ideas off of them. And then I also use it for D&D prep. And so I probably use it more primarily for D&D than anything. But it is a great, I actually just was in a webinar yesterday about this, about how to give it the proper prompts to generate a whole bunch of content, or at least content ideas. So that way you don't have to sit and plan for hours on what your whole month's content is going to look like. And I think that is where it really shines, is using it as like that assistant. And I've noticed that the more I chat back and forth with it, kind of like I would like a VA or something like that, it tends to get a little bit better. And so that's how I've been using it, to just like be like an idea board or soundboard to bounce things off of.
So you've used AI quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I got ChatGPT very early on. I wasn't one of the what was it, 5 million in 5 days or whatever, or 1 million in 5 days. I wasn't one of those ones, but I was pretty close, probably within the first month.
So let me ask you something, just in terms of the prompts, since you said that you also went to this webinar. Obviously, the more accurate our prompts are, the more accurate the response is. I've been testing a theory, and people say I'm crazy, but I've honestly done this experiment and I've gotten different results. So, I mean, either it's, an isolated incident or there's something to the madness in my thinking. Have you ever gotten different results from the AI by treating it in a different way, by like being more polite versus more like short and abrupt and, straight to business?
That's an interesting question. I don't know, because I try to treat it the same. Sometimes if it's like following, especially with image creation, if it's like following a train of thought that I don't like, I'll be like, all right, stop. This isn't what I want. Let's restart. And then I'll kind of rewrite a prompt, maybe not copy and paste, but change the wording. And that does sometimes help. But then sometimes it just gets caught in this loop where it just keeps screwing up. Obviously, it's one of its flaws. But I can't say I'm like, okay, well, now I'm going to need to talk more abruptly and sternly versus more polite and more detailed. I haven't really tried that A/B testing.
Well, my line of reasoning was, just so that everybody knows the complete thought process, is that AIs, they're based around large language models, right? And so this has been taught by millions upon millions of interactions between real people too. I mean, we're talking, 4chan, Facebook, Instagram comments, YouTube comments, Reddit. That should scare you right there. AI has been trained on Reddit, people. If that doesn't scare you, nothing will.
Right.
But the point is that the AI knows what kind of output someone got based on what they asked another individual. So it's not that they're going to be less factual or they're going to tell you something that's wrong, but if you write something in a certain way, then just based on its own observations, it will give you a different result. And I've got different images I've developed, just kind of showcase the difference. And it's very interesting because I forwarded those off for investigation actually, because I did these two. I did a very basic request, was, please give me an iguana picture. And it gives me this iguana picture, another one. And then if I say just like, give me an iguana picture, it was interesting because I'll show you this after the show too, because I don't want to take that up. But if you're interested in seeing it, again, anyone who's interested in seeing it, I'll be glad to post it. I actually did post it on my LinkedIn. But the first case where I was short and I didn't really say anything, I didn't say please. It gave me this picture of the iguana, but it was more centered. It was darker. Okay, the colors were darker, and it looked like a little less detailed, a little less flushed out. When I said please, I only added the word please. Then it gave me a zoomed out version, and it was bright, it was sunny, it was more detailed, it was more vibrant, and the eyes that it gave the iguana looked like they were kind of more on a positive emotion scale. I won't say what emotion because, I don't know. But in the picture where I didn't, the eyes looked more, it was almost like a fearful look, right? And so honestly, if this is called procrastinator's pit stop. So if I had more time on my hands, I'd probably be sitting there all day just trying to figure out what it did. But there's enough evidence there that I like asking other people, have they noticed the difference?
I do try to be polite. I say please and thank you because I think that there might be something to getting a better response out of it. And then when the robots do eventually take over, inevitably they'll see my chat and be like, all right, this guy was polite. We'll throw him in the bucket with one of the good ones.
No, I mean, yeah, no. People look at me like I'm crazy, but you know how you do the self checkouts, and it says, I love messing with people when it says thank you, have a nice day. It's like I just said, you're welcome. And I've done it so much now, it's like a social experiment because the first 3 times I did it, people looked at me like I was crazy. The 5th time I did it, I had 3 people behind me in line do the same thing.
Jeez, nice. Nice.
It's just because of shit. Someone's always watching.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I might, kind of inadvertently say, thanks you too. Leaving like it's kind of like when a server hands you your food and they're like, enjoy your meal, and you're like, yeah, thanks you too. And you're like, damn it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. But do you see AI as something that is going to, I don't know, is it going to help us more than it hinders us? I mean, are humans inherently lazy, or are we inherently just going to try and use it to augment, do you think?
Both. We definitely are inherently lazy. I mean, obviously, you look around in America and you'll see that because we are built for survival, right? And just like every other organism. And we want to do the minimum of effective dose, the minimum effort for that survival. Meaning, if we were chasing down rabbits. This is going back to when we were like hunter gatherers. We were chasing down rabbits, and it took us 3,000 calories to catch a rabbit that we would be able to get 1,000 calories from. That is a just negative change, right? And so it would be
Mm,
disadvantageous
mhm.
for us to be running around chasing rabbits when we could probably get berries, set traps, and stuff like that. So we are going to be doing the least amount of physical effort to get the biggest gain. And in modern day terms, that is the Taco Bell drive through. And so they're going from that hunter, because we still have that same brain, right? Our brain hasn't changed. So we still have that hunter gatherer brain to where we want to do at least as little as possible to get the biggest output. And obviously there's ways to change that. We have free will, obviously, but that's just kind of what our basic instinct says. And so that is a big reason why people don't have the motivation to do stuff. Going down that thought, you go to the gym 3 days, you don't see any results. Your brain then says, look, we've been doing this for 3 days now and we haven't seen any changes. We need to make a change. We need to do something different because clearly what we're doing is not working. Knowing full well that our bodies don't change overnight, right? It's not Amazon Prime. Our body's not going to get here in 2 days. And so we need to have the prolonged discipline because that initial motivation, which is looking for an instant gratification, is not going to sustain us. And so I think, yes, we're going to be as lazy as possible. Are we going to be like the people in Wally? Some people are. Some people already are. And I think the biggest producers and most successful people will use AI to improve and, like you said, augment a lot of their stuff. And then there will also be a large group of people that will use AI, very much like they are now, as that whole life source, the parasocial AI girlfriend, that type of stuff. I think that people we already have doing that. And I've seen like multiple instances where people are like in a deep relationship with this AI person that also ultimately leads to um, unaliving themselves and stuff like that. And so I think we're there, so at least like we're foot in the door already. But I also think that we, as a species, will evolve through it. That's a very long-winded answer.
No, you touched on some interesting points there. Wondering of what's going to happen if people don't want to have relationships. Because I mean, why would I want to? When someone's going to argue with me, or tell me that they want to go to a country concert, and I want to go to a rock concert, and like I'm not interested in that. So like, it's a slippery slope, but we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
And you say
Jordan,
even
it's
sorry, I was just
go
gonna
ahead.
jump in. Like even with ChatGPT now, like that's on your phone. I remember I was in a drive-through and I was doing D&D prep and I was just texting back and forth with it, and I'm like, man, this is dangerous because like it's texting on my phone. I was like, hey, what if we did this with this, blah blah blah, and it's like, oh, great idea. It always adds like, oh, that's a great idea. It's so awesome, that's fantastic. So it's like building it up, and I'm like, man, if this was like seen as an actual human being, like actually somebody you want to have a relationship with, you have unlimited access to them, they never sleep and everything like that. I'm like, I can definitely see how this can be a very slippery slope and very dangerous.
For sure, for sure. Jordan, it's been a really great conversation. We are coming up pretty close to the time. Is there anything that you wish I would have asked but didn't ask, or anything you feel we should have covered but we didn't cover today?
No, we covered a lot of stuff, dove into like AI and stuff like that. I think that's great. I would say, again, circling back to escapism, definitely invest time, energy into yourself. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money. You don't have to spend any money to be healthier. But so just know that no matter how much you're going to escape into a fantasy world, you have to prioritize your physical health. And so do that. And you do that by doing the most smallest bite sized action to doing that, whether that's just putting on your shoes and going for just putting on your shoes, make that be the goal. Because a lot of times that'll lead to other things that has a good downstream effect. And so as much as we like talking about AI and the digital world, always remember to prioritize your physical self, IRL.
I like that. Such a powerful point to end on. Just before we go, Jordan, is what's the best way that our listeners could reach out to you, maybe learn more?
Yeah, so my best platform is Instagram. It's just at my name, Jordan Yaklin. And then we also have a website, phoenixperformancecoaching.net. Most of my pretty much my internet's landing page is my Instagram.
Excellent. Well, and again, to all our listeners, don't worry about grabbing a pen and paper. We are going to have that in the show notes for you. Once again, Jordan, thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation. A lot of great insights. To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that motivation, inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.